Hello, hello. I hope everyone is having a fabulous day so far. Today I am talking to you about world building and just a quick aspect to it, because building your story world is, well, there's a lot that goes into it. So this video, I just wanted to talk a little bit about how when you build your world, if you ever feel like you're stuck because you just don't know enough about it, and you feel like you can't continue with your story because you don't have enough information, this may help make you feel a little bit more in control of what you're writing. It's really important to understand that world building is an iterative process. So you may think that, you have a general idea of the scope of your world, maybe the time period where everything takes place. You may have an idea of the various settings within your world, and you feel like, okay, I got a good sense of what's going on, and you start writing, and then you hit a moment in your story where maybe your characters are talking to each other and you realize, wow, they're talking in a vacuum. I don't have them grounded. I don't have them set up in a specific place. I wasn't thinking about this, and suddenly I don't know what to do. I don't know where they should be. I don't even know how to get them to where they should be, and panic sets in. You may have experienced something like this before. Don't freak out, okay? This is part of the process. What you need to understand when you first start thinking about your world is you're going to have an idea of the bigger events, because that's kind of the obvious, those are the obvious moments that come into your mind. You may have an idea of very small events too. Totally depends on you as a writer and the kind of story that you're writing. But it's very unlikely that you will have a precise sense of your story world from scene to scene to scene, all the way from beginning to end. You're going to find that there are gaps that you aren't prepared for, that you didn't know existed, that you don't know what to do with. And this is normal. What will help you fill in those gaps isn't actually more story world, it's characters and plot. And arguably, characters and plot are part of your story world for sure, but we often don't think of it like that. We often think when we're building our story world, we're thinking about setting, we're thinking about space and time, we're thinking about the props, the objects, the details, the description. We don't often think that in order for our story world to be part of our, or to be even fully captured, that we have to consider characters and plot. The truth of the matter is, though, that your world is going to affect your characters and your plot, just like your characters and your plot affect your story world. So it will be that you won't know enough about your story world until you actually get to know your characters and your plot. So if you're in the middle of a rough draft and you're feeling stuck and you're worried because you don't know enough, and you start thinking, well, maybe I need to stop or go back and revise, I wouldn't suggest that. Just leave yourself a little love note in the middle of your manuscript to kind of remind yourself why this particular scene isn't fully fleshed out, or why it feels like you don't have enough information, and move on and continue writing what you do know. It's more important that you finish your rough draft than it is to make sure that you have every scene in order, every scene figured out, because it just stands to reason that you're not going to be able to do that anyway until you finish a draft and you have a better sense of beginning, middle, and end. Okay, so keep that in mind if you're ever feeling a little stuck or a little unsure of where your story is going, because that's just part of the process. It's really normal. When we talk about how a character affects your world and how a world affects your character, I wanted to just bring up an example to you. Say for an example, you have a major story event like an earthquake, and you know that's going to take out your hometown of your character, okay? You know that this is going to happen, and you're like probably really excited to write it because those kinds of scenes are fun to write. It's not going to happen probably till the closer to the end of your story because it's a big turning point. You will want to ask yourself some information about how this earthquake will actually matter, because it's really important that the earthquake negatively affects your character's journey, okay? And because you do not want to have random events in your story that don't have any consequence to your character and the story goal that they're pursuing. So you want to be sure that when you are setting up these major events, that there are good reasons why your main character is going to be impacted. For example, why does your character insist on living in a town where there is the threat of earthquakes? Now, this isn't anything unusual in like the human sense. We all have to deal with different natural disasters, right? Depending on where we live in the world, there's one or more natural disasters that are in a threat throughout, depending on the season. What keeps us staying in those places? What is it about our personal choices that, in our personal lives that keep us in a place where there might be a lot of earthquakes or, there's a volcano or hurricanes, okay? You want to ask those same kinds of questions of your characters, because there has to be a good enough reason why your character sticks around. And because otherwise we're just gonna say, why don't they just leave? That doesn't make any sense. So figure that out. And the other thing you want to make sure of is that your character's journey is negatively impacted. So whatever their story goal is, you have this big event like the earthquake, you want to ask yourself, how is that earthquake going to become an obstacle for my character in their pursuit of their story goal? How are they going to make my character's life hell? Okay. This is really, really important. So say your character is an amateur detective and she is in the middle of solving a 50-year-old murder mystery, and she's collecting evidence that is found within the town that she lives. And she has personal stakes in solving this mystery. We always, you always want to make sure that your characters have personal stakes whenever they're involved in something like this. And you want to also, use this as a reason for why she's staying in this town, because this is where the evidence is being collected. This is just an example. And so she's collecting in her house. Maybe she keeps it in her house, and maybe she doesn't tell anyone about it, or maybe she does, but she tells the wrong kind of person about it. Maybe the information she's collecting is she has to keep secret because it actually targets a loved one, or it targets a really important person in the town. So you want to, increase the stakes, obviously, as we go along. I mean, this is just, storytelling 101. But how does the earthquake play into it? That's what you're asking yourself. So you're setting up your character, you're setting up her motivation, you're setting up why she's in this world, the story world to begin with, why everything about it you want to make sure is credible, believable, and it's reasonable, so that when your readers are going through your story, they're like, yeah, I get it. Yes, I see what's happening. This is not good. Oh, she should have left 5 months ago. She should never have stayed for that guy, whatever it might be. But you want, you're building up the suspense, possibly, if that's an angle of your story, maybe not, maybe suspense isn't part of it, but that could be what's going on. And in any event, what you're doing here, as you're thinking about your character and the choices that she's making to stay put, and even with the imminent threat of an earthquake, do you see how they all kind of play off each other? the character, the plot, and the world building, your setting. They all have to impact each other in one way or another, so that when your character does make a choice, that's obviously generating the plot. The plot as it goes along is affecting the world that everybody is in. And in turn, the world is going to respond because of character actions and character behaviors. So it all kind of folds in on itself a little bit, and you weave it together as you're creating your story. So these are just a couple of things that you want to be keeping in mind as you are building your world. Make sure that you don't just think about it as space and time, or description, or props, or, street signs or street names or buildings. That you also want to be considering the characters and the plot, so that your world does actually move and, kind of lives and breathes along with your character and the choices that they're making. All right, that was my big tip for today. Let me know if you have any questions about that, and I will talk to you later. Take care.